about health. You have a fire in there, and it gets really hot in there, and you sweat a whole bunch, and then you jump.
Eustace Conway, the rugged outdoorsman made famous by mountain men, has always lived on the edge surrounded by wilderness, old cabins, and the mysteries of nature. But what was discovered in his old workshop has left even his most devoted fans stunned for years. Conway's workshop was more than just a space for crafting tools or storing supplies. It was a reflection of his life, a place of ingenuity, adventure, and secrets kept away from the prying eyes of the modern world. Fans often marveled at his survival skills, his commitment to living off the grid, and the countless stories he shared about life in the wild. But no one expected that his workshop held secrets far stranger than anyone could have imagined. Inside that weathered structure, investigators, family members, and curious locals uncovered items and evidence that paint a picture completely different from the one seen on television. From rare artifacts to mysterious documents and objects whose origins are still debated, the discoveries tell a story that challenges everything fans thought they knew about Eustace Conway. The findings reveal a side of Conway's life that was hidden in plain sight aside. That is at once fascinating, shocking, and deeply unsettling. Questions immediately rose. What was he keeping? Why was it hidden? And what does it reveal about the man who has captivated audiences for over a decade? With his rugged charm and frontier lifestyle, this isn't just about artifacts or old belongings. It's about secrets, revelations, and the shocking truth that lies beneath the surface of a life devoted to the wild. What they found in Eustace Conway's old workshop will change how you view him forever, and it's far more shocking than anything portrayed. On Mountain Men, Eustace Conway is a man whose life has always seemed larger than the world around him. Born to wander and drawn to the wilderness from a young age, he became a living symbol of survivalism, resourcefulness, and the untamed spirit of the American frontier. But behind the public persona, there was a workshop, a seemingly ordinary structure tucked away on his sprawling property that would reveal astonishing secrets. When finally examined, the workshop had always been somewhat of a mystery. While fans saw Conway's workshops as part of his daily life, tools scattered across benches, wooden projects in various stages of completion, few knew the full extent of what was inside. Over the years, Conway had accumulated a collection of items both practical and peculiar. And while he never sought to deceive anyone, the private nature of his workspace made it an enigma to outsiders. It wasn't until family members, concerned with inventorying and preserving the property, stepped inside that the true scope of the workshop's contents became clear. The first thing they noticed was the sheer volume of items: stacks of old journals, hand-forged tools, preserved animal specimens, and artifacts that seemed to span decades of living off the land. Every corner of the workshop told a story, and the stories were stranger and darker than anyone expected. Among the items were detailed sketches of old structures, maps of undisclosed areas, and notes about wildlife patterns that suggested a level of observation and preparation beyond what even experienced survivalists might achieve. But it wasn't just the practical items that drew attention. Hidden in nooks and behind false panels were objects that seemed deliberately concealed: antique weapons, jars filled with unidentifiable substances, and personal mementos that hinted at past events never publicly discussed. As the family and a small team of investigators sifted through the collection, the sense of discovery grew. Each new item raised more questions than answers. Why had Conway chosen to keep certain objects hidden? Were they purely practical, or did they signify something deeper about his life, his fears, or his past? Every discovery hinted at untold stories, shedding light on aspects of Conway's life that contrasted sharply with his televised image. Even seasoned researchers were struck by the meticulous organization of the workshop. Despite the apparent chaos, there was an underlying logic, a system known only to Conway that reflected his mind: methodical, resourceful, and fiercely private. It became clear that this was more than a workspace. It was a repository of memories, knowledge, and secrets carefully curated over decades. What the team found in Eustace Conway's old workshop wasn't just old tools and trinkets. It was a revelation. Each artifact, document, and hidden object offered insight into a life lived deliberately, intensely and often in ways the world could never fully grasp. The shocking nature of the discovery isn't merely about the objects themselves, but what they reveal about the man behind the legend. As word of the discoveries began to spread, fans, followers, and curious observers speculated about the implications. Conway, the man who thrived in the wild, had kept secrets that were both fascinating and unsettling. The workshop, once just a place of creation and work, had become a window into a life far more complex and enigmatic than anyone had imagined. And this was only the beginning. What lay in the corners of that old, weathered workshop would continue to reveal astonishing truths that challenged the very image of Eustace Conway that the world thought it knew. As the team delved deeper into Eustace Conway's old workshop, the true extent of the hidden collection began to emerge. What initially appeared to be a typical survivalist workspace soon revealed layers of secrets that left even seasoned researchers stunned. Each shelf, box, and hidden compartment seemed to tell a story that no one had anticipated, stories that challenged the public image of Conway as merely an outdoorsman and reality TV star. Among the first shocking discoveries were meticulously preserved animal specimens. While some reflected Conway's well-known interest in biology and survival skills, others were unusual, rare birds, insects, and small mammals, preserved in ways that suggested a deep study of local ecosystems. Every specimen was labeled with careful notes about origin, behavior, and habitat, proof of a man who observed nature with extraordinary detail. What made it unsettling, however, was the sheer quantity and the presence of specimens that experts struggled to identify. These were not merely tools of education. They hinted at obsessive study and an almost secretive fascination with documenting the natural world in isolation. Even more surprising were the hidden artifacts tucked behind false walls and beneath loose floorboards. Old tools of unknown provenance, handcrafted items, and antique weaponry suggested connections to history that few could trace. Some items appeared to have been collected over decades, carefully preserved as if they held personal or cultural significance. Experts brought in to examine them were left puzzled, questioning whether Conway had stumbled upon forgotten relics or deliberately sought out objects of rare and mysterious origin. But perhaps the most alarming discoveries were the journals. Stacked neatly on a shelf, the notebooks contained detailed accounts of his daily life, survival experiments, and observations that extended far beyond the televised wilderness lessons. In some entries, Conway described events in eerie detail: storms, animal behavior, and unusual encounters that had never been mentioned publicly. Other passages hinted at preparation for scenarios that seemed extreme even by survivalist standards. These writings suggested a man planning for situations that most people would never consider, and a level of foresight that bordered on the obsessive. Some family members were particularly shaken by a series of letters and notes, tucked inside a locked cabinet, that referenced personal relationships, past conflicts, and events not widely known outside Conway's inner circle. These documents added a human layer to the shocking discoveries, revealing vulnerability, unresolved tensions, and aspects of Conway's personality that contrasted sharply with his rugged television persona. Fans had always admired his toughness and self-reliance, but these writings painted a more complex picture: a man of intellect, secrecy, and deep reflection. Adding to the intrigue, investigators discovered tools and devices that seemed almost experimental, ingenious creations that blended traditional craftsmanship with unconventional innovation. Some had obvious practical applications in survival or wilderness living. Others seemed almost fantastical, designed for tasks that were never explained. It became clear that the workshop was not just a place for ordinary projects. It was a laboratory of ideas, a vault of knowledge, and a treasure trove of secrets. Each new discovery fueled more questions. Why had Conway chosen to keep certain items so well hidden? What had motivated him to document and preserve so meticulously? And, perhaps most importantly, what do these objects reveal about the man himself, the legendary survivalist, who had captivated television audiences for years? The shocking truth is that Conway's workshop was far more than a space for building tools and storing supplies. It was a window into a private world that had existed parallel to his public persona, a world full of mysteries, obsessions, and revelations that had never been intended for public eyes. What investigators uncovered in that workshop is a reminder that appearances, even in the world of reality TV, can be deceiving. And while the first wave of discoveries was astounding, it was only the beginning. The deeper the team explored, the more they realized that the workshop held secrets that would continue to surprise, unsettle, and astonish anyone who ventured inside. As the investigation into Eustace Conway's old workshop progressed, the discoveries became increasingly bizarre, revealing one of the most startling finds was a series of hidden compartments containing objects that appeared to be relics from distant eras. Some were weathered tools, others fragments of antique firearms, and a few items seemed almost ceremonial in nature. Experts brought in to assess them were baffled. Some believed they had historical significance, while others speculated they might be part of Conway's personal collection of oddities, meant for study and experimentation. The mere fact that these objects were deliberately hidden raised questions about what Conway intended to do with them and why they were kept secret. Even more mysterious were several notebooks filled with sketches of intricate survival devices. Some were variations on traditional traps, while others resembled mechanical contraptions that could only be described as experimental. Pages were filled with meticulous instructions, diagrams, and notes about materials, many of which are not commonly available today. Investigators noted that these were not casual sketches. They were precise plans suggesting years of thought, trial, and innovation. It became clear that Conway's ingenuity went far beyond what the public ever saw on television. In addition to technical notes, the team discovered personal reflections that were both intimate and unsettling. Letters and journal entries referenced experiences and encounters in the wilderness that hinted at extraordinary and sometimes dangerous adventures. There were accounts of storms survived against impossible odds, unusual animal behaviors observed firsthand, and even encounters with people whose identities remain a mystery. These writings painted Conway not just as a rugged survivalist, but as someone who lived life fully, at times dangerously, and always with intense curiosity. Perhaps the most controversial finds were documents and objects suggesting preparation for extreme scenarios. Some items appeared to be tools and devices designed for off-grid living or self-sufficiency under conditions that seemed far more intense than ordinary survivalism. Notes detailed hypothetical emergencies, escape plans, and contingency measures, while some interpreted this as a natural extension of Conway's wilderness lifestyle. Others saw it as bordering on obsessive, revealing the intensity with which he approached his life's mission. Family members who participated in the exploration were particularly struck by a collection of letters and personal notes tucked away in a locked cabinet. These contained reflections on past conflicts, lessons learned, and private thoughts that were never meant for public eyes. Some passages were poignant, others shocking in their candor. They revealed Conway's vulnerabilities, regrets, and an unwavering commitment to principles that had guided his unconventional life. Together, these discoveries painted a picture of a man whose life extended far beyond what fans had seen on television. Conway was not just a mountain man or reality TV star, he was a thinker, an innovator, and a meticulous documenter of both nature and human experience. The workshop, with its hidden compartments and carefully curated collection, served as both a laboratory and a private archive, a space where Conway's passions, obsessions, and genius were preserved for decades. By the time the team finished their initial exploration, it was clear that Eustace Conway's workshop was a treasure trove of knowledge, innovation, and mystery. What had begun as a simple inventory turned into a revelation of the hidden depths of a man who had spent a lifetime surviving, studying, and living deliberately. And yet, despite all the shocking discoveries, the workshop still held secrets. Many questions remained unanswered, and some objects defied explanation entirely. It was a reminder that no matter how well we think we know someone, even someone as public and legendary as Eustace Conway, there is always more beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered. The deeper the team explored Eustace Conway's old workshop, the more it became clear that this was not merely a space for woodworking and tool storage. It was a vault of secrets, ingenuity, and unexpected revelations. What began as curiosity had now transformed into shock, as the findings revealed aspects of Conway's life and mind that few could have anticipated. Among the most astonishing discoveries were several crates of rare artifacts that seemed entirely out of place in a survivalist's workshop. Some appeared to be historical relics, possibly centuries old, while others were handmade tools and instruments whose purpose remains unclear. Experts who examined them speculated about their origin. Some were likely acquired through antique trades. Others might have been found in remote areas during Conway's many wilderness excursions. The fact that Conway had deliberately hidden them suggested a man deeply protective of his personal collection, aware of its value and significance. The workshop also contained several locked cabinets and hidden drawers filled with journals, letters, and detailed plans. Within these were accounts of experiences far beyond ordinary survival, encounters with extreme weather, unusual wildlife, and even mysterious individuals whose stories were never shared publicly. Some pages described methods of preparing for scenarios that most would consider extreme, involving food storage, water purification, and other survival tactics taken to an obsessive level. These were not the casual notes of a hobbyist. They were the careful planning of a man who anticipated the unpredictable nature of both wilderness and life itself. Perhaps the most unsettling items were a series of personal effects and documents that hinted at Conway's private struggles and vulnerabilities. Letters addressed to family members revealed fears, regrets, and reflections that contrasted sharply with his public persona of fearless ruggedness. There were notes expressing concern over relationships, moments of self-doubt, and even philosophical musings on life, mortality, and legacy. It was a side of Conway rarely, if ever, glimpsed by the public, a deeply human, contemplative figure hidden behind the mask of the mountain man. Investigators were also surprised by the presence of several experimental tools and devices that seemed almost futuristic in conception. Some appeared to be attempts at mechanical innovations, combining traditional craftsmanship with unconventional design. There were prototypes of traps, collection devices, and tools that could have multiple purposes in survival scenarios. These items reflected Conway's creativity and problem-solving skills, but also hinted at an intense dedication bordering on obsession. Every detail was meticulously documented in his journals, showing a mind constantly engaged with planning, analysis, and preparation. Family members noted that while some of the discoveries were practical, others were symbolic items that represented key moments in Conway's life, memorialized in ways that only he could fully understand. Old photographs, keepsakes, and handcrafted objects told a story of a life lived deliberately, intensely, and often in isolation. The workshop, it seemed, was as much a repository of memories as it was a functional workspace. What these discoveries ultimately revealed is that Eustace Conway's life has been far more layered than most ever realized. Beyond the public persona of the rugged survivalist and television star lies a man who was thoughtful, innovative, and intensely private. His workshop, with its hidden compartments, experimental devices, and carefully preserved items, was a reflection of that complexity. For fans and investigators alike, the revelations are both shocking and illuminating. They show that Conway's life was guided not just by survival instincts, but by a profound commitment to preparation, observation, and documentation. The objects in the workshop provide a window into a mind constantly exploring, analyzing, and creating a stark contrast to the simple, frontier image presented on screen. In the end, the shocking discoveries in Eustace Conway's old workshop remind us that the truth behind any legend is often stranger and more fascinating than fiction. What fans saw on television was only the surface. Beneath it lay a world of secrets, intelligence, and devotion that few could have imagined, and that will continue to captivate and astonish anyone who uncovers it.